Hey guys, it's Kai here from Esports UK, brought to you by AOC and ESI London. Today I'm joined by Frankie Ward, a CSGO and pretty much every other esports host and interviewer well known in the UK scene. So we're just going to interview her like a couple quick questions. So first of all, tell us about what you're doing here at Insomnia, and is this your first Insomnia or have you been here before?
So this Insomnia, I've been working with Intel because they've been my sponsor for the last 3 years. So I've been with the Intel Gaming Alliance, the UK contingency, so two and good gamers, my mates Tommy and Adam. We do have another UK member, but he emigrated to Canada, Sacriel. Some of you might have heard of him. He's fab and much better at video games than me. But sadly, he's not here. So the three of us yesterday were doing some social content. We did a stream as well for the Twitch Intel channel because it's part of Intel Gamer Days.
Yep.
You get loads of deals and things until 4th of September. That's my plug. I'll get that in there. And today I'm doing a show on the main stage for Insomnia. But this is my third Insomnia. So I came here as a producer for Twitch for I-58, yep, which was 6 weeks into the job at Twitch. And then I-60 as well, which was the following Easter. So yeah, it's cool to be back at the NEC. It's weird because it's been about 5 years since I was last at an Insomnia. But yeah, it's nice to be back.
Nice. Do you see any difference between COVID, pre-COVID and post-COVID?
Here, I mean, there's a lot more hand sanitizer on booths. I've seen a few people wearing masks, but to be honest, not that many. The thing about this event that's kind of nice really is because it's much more focused on LAN rather than Expo. In fact, more so than previous Insomnias I've been to. There aren't too many people rammed into small spaces, and I do appreciate that. I think I'd be a bit concerned about going to somewhere like Gamescom, for example, where when you're in the public days and you're walking between halls, it's so, I'm going to use a very British sounding phrase, it's very guts to gooch. So I would wear a mask if I was there, but also Germany, they're quite strict about mask wearing anyway. So yeah, I haven't really noticed too much of a difference. Yeah. I won't lie.
So you said you started off doing Insomnia 58 with Twitch. You started off your career at BBC doing reporting for 2015 League of Legends World Championship.
That's my first esports. Yes. I mean, I'm long in the tooth for an esports person, or at least for a person working in esports. Not actual, like, my esports age is not that old. My working age, I've been producing and things for about 15 years.
Yes. So what aspect of esports kind of appealed to you most when starting off?
As a storytelling, so I wanted to tell the stories of the people that I saw on stage because I hadn't really experienced esports before. I think I'd heard of it, but when I got to Wembley doing those quarterfinals of League, I was covering for the BBC and I really loved the audience. And I was hearing about Faker for the first time. I know, it sounds so naive. I didn't know who Faker was before 2015, but there was like a lot of rumblings about whether he was actually going to play at the quarterfinals or not, and over the weekend, over the course of the 3 days, and won't he and take to the stage, and many other stories besides. But I was just absolutely fascinated by it, and I just wanted to work with these people and wanted to work in this world because I never realised I had a space in video games. I played video games all my life. I just didn't know that there was some opportunity to work in that space, and suddenly I found it. So that's kind of how it began.
You talk about having, in a previous interview, the emotion kind of kept you in.
Yeah, definitely, because you're seeing people achieve their dreams. I've written about being an interviewer and how it's a position that is not, it's not like the most celebrated position in esports. It's almost seen, well, it is seen as an entryway to, say, desk hosting, for example. Certainly when I was doing a lot of ESL work, it felt like interviewer was the role where, you know, you go into that role and then, you know, one day maybe you'd be like asked to do desk hosting. But for me, that's a really interesting role because you have the privilege of being the closest to those players. You are there at the side of the stage when they lift a trophy. You're not in the studio, you are literally there. And for me, that means it's one of the biggest privileges. Yeah. It's a privilege in a different sense because if you're hosting a desk hosting major, then you have the privilege of being, you know, the direct connection to the viewers. But if you're doing the interviews, you are the direct connection with the players.
Yeah. Perfect.
So, yeah.
As you've been doing esports for a long time, what advice would you give towards like young people wanting to get into the esports industry, especially with the journalism route as you did with producing?
So I would say come to events like this, so Insomnia, Epic LAN, opportunities to be involved with these events are actually quite large. There is the age-old issue, however, of that some people are born with the opportunity of having a gaming PC all their lives. not everyone has that. So hopefully Twitch is a lot more accessible to audiences and things like that. But I am conscious that it's a lot easier for people with means to work for free and things like that. So obviously, if you can afford to do that, then do that. I would love to see initiatives from websites to at least pay for board and for food and things like that for the people that are volunteering to do work for them, so that when they do come to events like this, it doesn't matter what their background is, they can get involved, they can get invested, and they can get that experience they need. For me personally, although it wasn't writing about esports and making content about esports, I started producing things and writing things when I went to university and I was a student, and I had my student loan, and I was living in the city, not in Maidstone, Kent anymore, and I was going to gigs, and I was going to these gigs for free because I just said I was there for the radio station, for the student radio station, even though we went off air after 3 weeks because we were a fire hazard. The bands didn't know that. So I got that experience, and then I was able to have a portfolio of work, even just self-published work, or for a couple of websites in Birmingham, and I was able to send that to people like BBC and Channel 4 and apply for their internships. The first one I did for the BBC was like this blast thing 2 days a week. I didn't get paid for that, and I went into my credit card. But the following year, I got paid a little bit of money to do Channel 4, and it bloody helped. I won't lie. But I also maintain contacts along the way, because this is about contacts. This job is all about contacts. So once you get your foot in the door, is how you conduct yourself. But there are also roles, not just in journalism side, obviously, Epic LAN, tournament admins, player management, all that kind of stuff. Get some credits at Epic LAN, at Insomnias, and then you can apply to ESLs and other TOs.
Yes. And now this is sort of going into women in esports here. Would you say esports is becoming more or less toxic towards women? Because I know from my perspective, in-game, it's getting more and more toxic. But then at LANs and everything, everyone's kind of pleasant.
Yeah, I mean, that's because people are hidden behind microphones. You can't see their face. So they don't connect with the person behind the voice, and that's the person being toxic and the person receiving the toxicity. So these are opportunities for people to feel... I guess I'm quoting my friend Adam, who was talking to me about a book about tribalism that he'd been reading, where people want to feel part of a thing, but being part of that thing involves bringing the opposite thing down. So by being toxic, people then get like an endorphin rush of belonging to a belief system or a tribe. And so I think that's what's kind of happening at the moment, probably more so because people really desperately need to belong because they've been isolated for 2 years with COVID. Now, I'm not saying that's an excuse for toxicity, it's just my way of trying to understand why people are the way they are. I also think that maybe toxicity hasn't got worse in game, it's just that people are much more attuned to it. People are watching clips are going viral, people are starting to speak out about it. Valorant's a really interesting one because I think it has a wider appeal to women than potentially other first-person shooters in the past. It kind of picks up from Overwatch, which was very diverse in its casting, in its characters and its player base. Sorry, when I say casting, I mean characters as opposed to commentary. And I think that we also had a lot of very high-level CSGO players, professional female players went over to Valorant because they said, come to us and start fresh. Yep. There's no history here, there's no legacy for you to have to overcome. You can just start and be respected. And you see G2 Gosu, for example, very, very storied female CS players dominate.
Yeah. Because
they don't have any baggage, they can just go out there and conquer. So yeah, I don't know if it's got worse. I just think that we're more... people are more aware that it is a problem now, and it's not just women saying, hey, this is really shit. I think there are more men now saying, actually, that's not cool.
Yeah, perfect.
Which is great.
Yeah. And you just mentioned that there's women going off and dominating in their respective fields because they're letting go of the baggage. Why do you feel as though there isn't a lot of women in top-tier pro play tournaments such as ESL?
So in Counter-Strike and things like that.
Yeah, Counter-Strike and...
there are lots of reasons. I'm not an expert because I'm not a pro player. I think that when you start to play games, I do have a theory that's the sense that at least for me, when I was younger, remember I'm 33 now, I'm not a teenage girl anymore. I definitely had this thing where when I was playing sport and things like that, say if I was playing football on the field, again, written about this, I was kind of seen as other for wanting to do things. I'm not that competitive a person either, again, I'm not an expert in this. But I do think that girls are kind of brought up to like behave themselves, be academic, don't stay out of line, don't upset people, don't, you know, tip over the apple cart, whatever that phrase is. So you always have to have a backup plan, I feel like, as a woman, especially in an industry where you can't see any other women doing it at the top.
Yeah.
So you haven't necessarily got girls like throwing themselves into, say, Counter-Strike and going, this is the be-all and the end-all, because they won't necessarily see a space for themselves. So why would you throw all your eggs into one basket and just be like, yeah, I'm going to be the first woman to lift a Counter-Strike major trophy? Because there's no guarantee that a team is going to want you. They might cite culture. You're going to face so much pressure. You're not going to face pressure just as a player on the server. You're also going to face community pressure because you're a woman on the server. Yeah. And people will say, oh no, it doesn't matter, but there's no differences and all that kind of stuff. But psychologically, there is a difference. And if psychology didn't matter, we wouldn't see all of these esports orgs picking up psychologists. One of the things that set Astralis apart from other teams early on, you know, into their area of dominance, was they were working with a sports psychologist. The same with OG before they won TI. It makes a huge difference, and having that mental block is always going to be an issue. And so I'm not really sure what it's going to take for us to see women in the top tiers, unfortunately, in team sports, because in team esports, because of that barrier. You're going to have a lot of investment, and there is going to have to be a group of women who go, fuck it, we're going to do this. Yep. But I think it's going to be a mixed roster that does it first.
Yeah. And you mentioned that for girls in particular, to have a person up in having a role model is so important because it gives them the strength. I can do this. What advice would you give towards young girls looking to get into what you're doing?
Well, to get into what I'm doing, I mean, I think that it's getting better all the time in terms of visibility. And I think, for example, like ESL at the moment, I'm seeing a lot more women doing their events. Lucy Lou's, Veracity. There are some really cool female voices that are coming through, and new male voices as well. So I think for any presenter, whether they're male or female, non-binary, I would say you need to find the thing that makes you you. Because sometimes people are so young, they don't know necessarily who they are yet. I came into hosting full time at 29, so I kind of did. Yeah, finding out what you want to talk about, because I became a great presenter when I found out. Great presenter. but I think that I became a hireable presenter when I understood what I wanted to talk about, and that was kind of a few years before I started presenting, which is when I went to that League of Legends event and I want to talk about this. And previously I hadn't necessarily known. I love music, but I didn't see where I had a unique angle on that. I was a music presenter for a while, specialist music presenter, and I was a radio producer. But yeah, I understood what I wanted to do and what I wanted to bring to the space, which was obviously to take these big events seriously, but also to kind of bring some levity and work on personality with players. So how do I charm and disarm them? How do we get to see a different side of those players and things like that? And I think that's something I was successful in doing as an interviewer. And I think there are other interviewers who are also very successful at that now. But my specialism is, I guess, working with players who have never done interviews before. English is their second language. But I also, obviously, the bigger players trying to find that new angle. And that takes a lot of research and a lot of emotional intelligence.
Yes, a lot of hard work as well. I imagine pushing through, because you've become pretty much a staple in CSGO. You've done some incredible interviews over the past years with Astralis and everyone. So congratulations on that. Now, sort of slight detour as we're kind of rounding up. What are your thoughts on franchising? Because I know CSGO started trying to do it with Flashpoint, and that kind of failed in the end because they've only got 2 partner teams left now, and it's kind of like there's no streams.
I don't think it exists. It doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, let's face it. It doesn't exist.
And you've kind of had experience with Overwatch as well. What are your thoughts overall on franchising?
I think that it works potentially when the publisher is the driving force. So, for example, look at League of Legends, right? LEC is a phenomenal success. I'm very lucky that I've worked on that show. They have their own studio, they have their own weekly schedule. It's a tough schedule, like, because you've got 8 weeks of split, and then you've got your playoffs as well, and then that's one split, short break, another split, and then straight into world cycle. It is intense. But because Riot own that, they're the publisher, they're the developer, and they are the tournament organizer and the tournament broadcaster, right? So they are able to control the franchising and things like that. So I think it works for them very, very well. But also because it's proven and it's very stable. You know, those slots are worth something, like Misfits selling their slot recently to Heretics. I mean, I don't actually know the exact figure. It was over, like 30 million or something?
25 million.
25 million, there you go. I knew it was over 20 million, I just wasn't sure the exact amount, right? So, but I don't believe League started as a franchise league, and I know that ESL did the production for many years, for example, before Riot took it in-house. Whereas, say, Overwatch League, they announced Overwatch League, then they shut down all their tier 2 tournaments, like Apex, for example, in Korea, I believe, shut down. That was a very successful league at the time, especially for developing new talent. So suddenly you have, for over a year, you don't have those leagues anymore, and so your like new talent coming through potentially is a bit stymied. So by the time you get into the actual league, some of the momentum has been lost, and that I think was an issue for them. And maybe they should have kept up those those more independent tournaments and leagues until further down the line. I'm not saying that Overwatch League is a failure by any means, but in terms of franchising as a success story, it's obviously not at the stage that LEC is either. Whereas with Counter-Strike, one of the great things about Counter-Strike is that it's not franchised and there are multiple tournament organisers. And that means there's multiple voices and things like that. It can be quite stressful when you are a freelance talent and you are, trying to like work out where you are, where you're going to be next in the world and what you're going to be working on and things like that. And that's something I definitely struggled on when I was doing Counter-Strike as my main esport. But I also think that the scene is very strong for having different tournament organisers and different ways of approaching the subject. Sometimes I talk to broadcasters about doing shows about games and esports, and I always give the example of Riot and Valve. Riot, very, very hands-on with the product. You're going to get a lot of input from them, you're going to get a lot of help, but you're also going to have to be a bit more lenient and let them have input on the editorial side of things and how their game is presented. Or you can work with Valve, who are going to give you nothing and yet everything. They're going to let you pretty much do what you want with their game, but they're going to give you no resource, they're going to give you no support whatsoever, and you're on your own. Yeah. So which one of those two things do you want? And that's what I'm often talking to people, because they always want to go to Riot because, hey, it's whiz-bangery and the guns aren't very big. There are guns in League of Legends, but you're Respawn, it's fine. In Counter-Strike, it's like boom, boom, bang, bang, terrorist, anti-terrorist, right? So I've just gone off on a tangent. I appreciate it, guys. But yeah, so my thoughts on franchising are, it can work, but people shouldn't rush. Developers, publishers, they shouldn't be rushing into franchising. They really need to think about the value to themselves, the teams, and the audience. Because if all three of those entities are not getting value, then it's going to die on its ass.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you spoke about the international stage. What are your thoughts about the UK esports scene, especially? Because you're obviously from the UK, quite a large figurehead in UK esports, I think.
Massive.
So.
I'm joking. The head's not wet. It will be bigger as the day goes on, guys. Yeah. So my thoughts on esports in the UK. I feel really guilty about this because I'm not that too involved day to day in UK esports. I always make jokes though when I'm seeing like a British tournament or like British teams and someone comes up and does an interview. I saw this at Rocket League recently when like Moist Esports won, because I did go down to the coffee box really briefly because I got mates to do Rocket League, and also like I really love that esport. I think it's great and it's a really great entry for new esports viewers. But I'm pretty sure it was at that tournament anyway where there was an interview on stage and I turned to the person I was with and I said, it's a British player, so what's going to happen is at some point they're going to say our opponent was not as good as we expected them to be, and literally a minute later they did exactly that. And that kind of, I love British esports players for this, in the sense that we're so arrogant. Like, it's so funny how literally, so we'll pick up an 800 quid check from the station on Insomnia and just be like, well, that's it, lads, the best in the world, no one's as good as us. And then what happens is we never hear from them on the international stage. So sometimes I think that's brilliant in its own way, but I do think that we need to sometimes like have a look at like how we how are we gonna make our esports players like the greatest in the world? But I wonder if there's just something in the British nature that we think we made it before we have. Obviously, we do have some massive British players who played in Overwatch League, obviously in Valorant at the moment, but the kind of Boaster, for example.
Fantastic.
Boaster, wanted to be Counter-Strike Pro. Then he was like a backup for XL and was making content for them. And then jumped into Valorant and understands the importance of being a personality, being a great person, and being a fantastic player and teammate. And I think that he's a really, really important figure in British esports, because I think he signals a sea change. And I think that more and more players, hopefully from this local scene, are going to look at what he's doing and follow that example. And I think that UK esports is going to be all the better for it. But also, actually, shout out to the Moist Esports boys, because like I made a joke about their on-stage bants, but I really respect them as a team. The ridiculous name. They're doing brilliant things in Rocket League, and actually in Rocket League, British players have always done really, really well. Like you look at Scottish players, people like Mark Dida, for example, Scrub Killer, and guys like that. So yeah, apparently we're really good at exploding balls.
Perfect. Now just to wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add, or any shout-outs to anyone if you'd like to?
Yeah, no, really. Thank you for offering me the platform. Obviously, I've already mentioned Intel, but shout out to Intel for being my sponsor for the last 2 years, because it's been. I had a baby in January, so I haven't had maternity leave. Well, I was going to, but I had like a month on the sofa before the baby was born. Where I was just like, please leave me, please leave my womb. But yeah, I've kind of been really fortunate that I've had a lot of help from family and things to just try and get me to things like the major in Belgium. And the reason that I want to shout out Intel in particular is because when Aoife, my babe, was born, they sent me an email that just went, yeah, so we understand, a bit busy right now, so if you can't do stuff for us, then that's cool, just tell us, like, we understand, we get it. But also, here's a box of frozen meals to get you through. It's like, I love that my sponsor sent me some ready meals. Some food. They're like, we understand, it's cool, please take care of yourself, and like, everything else doesn't matter right now. And I appreciate that, because I don't think people always, like, there's so much grind in esports. There's so much you have to be on all the time, and like I'm now finding that I can't be that anymore. So the people who are cool with that, like PGL being like, oh yeah, your baby's 6 weeks old. Well, when she's 4 months, are you cool to come to Belgium? Like, because we still see you as broadcast talent. We don't see you as a mum who's not going to want to do it. And I was like, yeah, sure. Got an Airbnb. Perfect. Grandparents came over with the babe. Yeah. Amazing. I went out on stage and quoted Carrigan copy pasta when I brought FaZe on for the final. So. No one noticed. It's fine.
Oh. Thank you very much for giving your time to Esports News UK. And thank you guys for watching. So see you soon.